children reading. Oh, what a wonderful sight, right? Reading ability. Reading ability is a big issue in schools because so much depends on the ability to read. So it's so foundational, not just to reading itself, but to so many other facets of life. So teaching reading becomes a huge focus for teachers, especially in early grades. And over the years, different experts have come up with different techniques for teaching reading. Well, in my humble opinion, there is no one best way, but you need to know what are the possibilities, what kind of things have been developed. Learning through meaning is one way that has been attracting attention at times. In other words, what's sometimes called language experience. Let the child talk. Let the child tell you a story. Let the child tell you about their experience. Write it down. Read it back. Read it back. Read it back. Let the child read it back. But the child doesn't know how to read. Well, according to some theories, see, if you repeat often enough, encourage enough, and if the fact it was their own words to begin with, they will read it back. And they will learn to read through the experience of talking and having it written down and dictated. Okay? That's one. There's another program that has been invented known as whole language, which was meant to be a combination of talking, listening, writing. We're going to do all these things when you're in, say, kindergarten, and out of that comes the ability to read. Learning through decoding is another very popular way of teaching reading. What do we mean by that? We mean phonics, teaching students to associate letters of the alphabet with certain sounds so that they can, as we've many times said, they can sound out words. Of course, the problem with phonics is that the English language has so many irregularities in pronunciation and spelling and such that phonics is sort of limited. And then there's a point where you just have to memorize a whole lot of words by sight in order to read them. The whole point, though, in those early grades of teaching children to read is to finally reach the point where you can flip that, and instead of learning to read, they are now at the point where they can read to learn. And reading becomes a part of science and social studies and everything else they're going to be doing. So then when you get to the upper grades, you're then talking about teaching reading comprehension, making sure that what you read you are understanding correctly, both at a basic level and at a subtle level. And so what do teachers do for comprehension? Well, they focus attention on certain things. They say, all right, we read this story, or we're about to read this story. Let's identify the main characters. Who are the main characters in this story? What's the main idea in this story? What are the characters trying to do? What's the plot? What is it that goes on in the story, beginning, middle, end? And how does the story end? And how does it resolve in case there was a problem? How does the problem resolve? Getting children to focus on these particular attributes that will help them say, okay, I know what that story was about. I understand and appreciate what the author was trying to do. And then there's what's called reciprocal teaching method, where you get students to summarize the main idea, clarify points, make sure they understand whatever vocabulary that's going to be in the story, and then before you get too far into the story, stop. Let's predict, what do you think is going to happen next in this story? What's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is students are thinking along with the author of the story. They're thinking along, and even though their prediction may not tend to be correct in the end, it doesn't matter because the students are getting involved in the story and they are anticipating. And then, of course, there's reading in the subject areas. As I said, social studies, science. You read research. You read textbooks. You have students go out and do research on the internet. And they're needing to be able to read and comprehend what the authors are saying. Not just fiction, but of course nonfiction. Very, very important set of skills there. So before I end this, I want to talk about a special case, and that is dyslexia. Dyslexia is difficulty with perceiving letter order or having trouble with working out phonics. You'll find that there are children in the world, in your classroom, who are just, for some reason, they reverse letters or they reverse the order of letters. And so they'll say that B, they'll call it a D. P, Q, they're not sure. Or it may be phonics trouble. The thing is, because they're having trouble reading individual words, then, of course, their comprehension is going to suffer. And then along with that comes being frustrated about school in general because so much of school is about reading. So what do? Well, you give extra phonics instruction, one-on-one if possible. You provide the student material to read in a more readable, dyslexic-friendly font, and there are some. You try to reduce stress for that student as much as possible because stress tends to make the problem worse. And maturity does help. Maturity helps a bit in this because the young child doesn't understand, why is it I can't get this and all my classmates can? I'm stupid. I'm hopeless. I can't do anything about it. I'll just get angry. I'll just withdraw. Whereas with older students, as they mature, there is the possibility that they can look at the situation and say, okay, I've got this difficulty. Science has not found a cure for it, but I can start looking for ways to compensate for it as best I can and get the help I need from whomever I can get help from. So that maturity can help later on if they're not too frustrated already. But it is a real case. It's something to be aware of, that children who need really special help in this area, and as I said, there's no cure, but attention to the problem and de-stressing can make a big difference. So, you have to understand, reading at the lower levels, reading at the upper levels, these are enormous topics that involve college courses and specialties in education. So this is just a preliminary, just to give you a taste of what's out there, what the issues are. I encourage you to work on practice questions, look into supplemental readings for this, go through the video more than once, take notes, and see what you can learn about this very vital topic.